The Litany of Faith begins with words of protection. It ends with words of devotion. I spoke them backwards once, seeking hidden power in reversed prayer. The Imperium teaches that words hold power, that faith shapes reality. They never tell you what happens when you invert that power. My name was Corvus of the Black Templars. I was a Lexicanum, a scholar of sacred texts, a sanctioned psyker in a chapter that despised my kind. Now I am the lesson they whisper to restrain curiosity, the warning carved in corrupted flesh. I was an anomaly from the moment of my ascension. The Black Templars harbor no librarius, maintain no organized cadre of psykers, view the witch with the same contempt they reserve for Xenos and heretics. Yet the Imperium's tithe demands what it demands, and when gene seed produces a psyker, even the most zealous chapter must bend to the administratum's requirements. I was sanctioned, tested, trained on Mars by the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, then returned to my chapter like a weapon they had requested but did not want. They called me Lexicanum, not librarian. The distinction mattered to them. I was not a keeper of esoteric knowledge, but a cataloger of approved texts, a scribe who happened to possess psychic talents useful in deciphering corrupted documents recovered from battlefields. I existed in a strange liminal space within the chapter, necessary but never welcomed, tolerated but never trusted. My quarters were separate from my battle brothers. My presence in the chapel was permitted but not encouraged. When I walked the corridors of our battle barge, the Eternal Crusader, other Templars would touch their purity seals and mutter litanies of protection. I told myself I did not care. I had always been different, even before the black ships took me from my birth world. While other aspirants bonded through shared combat drills and hypno-indoctrination, I found solace in the chapter's archives, in the dusty tomes and sacred scrolls that detailed our glorious history. Where my brothers saw only words to be recited by rote, I saw patterns, structures, architectural frameworks of faith made manifest through language. The Litany of Faith was my particular obsession. Every battle brother learned it during their transformation from aspirant to initiate, recited it before combat, whispered it during moments of doubt. The words were ancient, dating back to the founding of our chapter, possibly earlier, fragments of devotional texts from the time of the Great Crusade. 27 verses, each building upon the last, each reinforcing the warrior's connection to the Emperor and his purpose. But I wanted to understand why these particular words in this particular order. Why did the Litany of Protection begin with invocations of the Emperor's golden throne rather than his martial prowess? Why did the Litany of Hate crescendo at the 13th verse rather than the 12th or 14th? There was a science to these prayers, a psychic architecture that I could sense but not fully comprehend. My talents allowed me to perceive the warp, to feel the way faith and devotion created eddies and currents in that nightmare realm. When 1,000 battle brothers spoke the same litany in unison, I could see the effect. I could watch the way their unified will created barriers against demonic incursion or bolstered their resistance to fear and pain. Chaplain Mordecai found me one evening in the Reclusium, surrounded by data slates displaying different versions of the Litany of Faith recovered from various campaigns. I had been comparing them, noting the minor variations that had crept in over millennia, trying to determine if these changes affected their psychic efficacy. "Brother Corvus," he said, his voice filtering through his skull helm with mechanical distortion, "your duties require you to catalog these texts, not to analyze them." I looked up from my work, sensing the disapproval radiating from him like heat from a forge. Chaplain Mordecai was old by Astartes standards, perhaps 4 centuries of service, his armor black as the void and adorned with purity seals earned through countless battles against the enemies of mankind. He carried his Crozius Arcanum in one hand, the eagle-topped staff crackling with barely restrained power. "I seek only to better understand the Emperor's gifts," I replied carefully. Knowledge of how these litanies function might allow us to employ them more effectively in battle. They function through faith, Mordecai said flatly. Understanding is irrelevant. A weapon does not need to comprehend the mechanisms of its firing chamber to kill the Emperor's enemies. But I am not merely a weapon, Brother Chaplain. I am a thinking warrior, created through the Emperor's design to serve with both strength and wisdom. Mordecai moved closer, his massive armored form casting me in shadow. You are a psyker, Brother Corvus. An aberration we tolerate because the Imperium requires it. Your wisdom is suspect by its very nature, tainted by the same connection to the warp that gives you power. The litanies are sacred precisely because they have been tested through 10 millennia of warfare. They are not puzzles for you to solve or mechanisms for you to improve. They are holy writ, perfect as given. I wanted to argue, to point out that perfection could be better understood through study, that knowledge was itself a form of devotion. But I recognized the futility. Mordecai represented the chapter's true soul, the unquestioning faith that had carried the Black Templars through countless crusades. My curiosity was an aberration, a flaw to be tolerated rather than encouraged. I understand, Brother Chaplain, I said, deactivating the data slates. He regarded me for a long moment before turning to leave. At the threshold, he paused. There was another like you once, before my time. Brother Lexicanum Ephraim. He too sought to understand rather than simply believe. He asked questions about why certain prayers were forbidden, why some texts were locked away rather than studied. One day, he disappeared from his quarters. We found what remained of him 3 decks below, writing blasphemies in his own blood across the bulkheads. The thing wearing his face laughed when we burned it. The chaplain departed, leaving me alone with his warning echoing in the reclusium's vaulted space. I should have heeded it. I should have recognized it as the Emperor's mercy, a chance to step back from the precipice. Instead, I felt a perverse validation. I was not the first to ask these questions, not the first to sense that understanding could coexist with faith. That night, alone in my quarters, I dreamed of backwards voices, of litanies spoken in reverse that produced sounds I could almost but not quite understand. I dismissed them as psychic echoes from the warp, the background noise that every sanctioned psyker learned to filter and ignore. I was wrong. The voices were not echoes. They were invitations. The Vinculus Crusade began 3 months later. High Marshal Helbrecht himself led our fleet into the Vinculus Nebula, where reports indicated a substantial word-bearer's presence corrupting imperial worlds through their dark sermons and blasphemous rituals. We were joined by elements from 5 other crusades, nearly 3,000 Black Templars committed to purging the traitors from a dozen systems. I was assigned to the strike force commanded by Castellan Draco, tasked with boarding actions against word-bearers' vessels. My role was specific: to counter enemy psykers who might attempt to corrupt our brothers or manipulate the warp during ship-to-ship combat. It was dangerous work, pitting my sanctioned abilities against the sorcerers and dark apostles who had embraced damnation in service to the ruinous powers. The first engagement taught me the depths of my inadequacy. We boarded a word-bearer's strike cruiser, the Unrepentant Truth, breaching their hull with boarding torpedoes that delivered us directly into their lower decks. The corridors were wrong, twisted by warp corruption into impossible geometries that hurt to perceive with normal vision. Symbols covered every surface, demonic script that seemed to writhe and shift when observed directly. Castellan Draco led our assault with characteristic fury, his power sword cutting through corrupted Astartes with righteous wrath. I followed behind the assault squads, my force staff crackling with psychic energy, as I attempted to maintain a protective barrier against the warp taint that saturated the vessel. But I was one psyker against an entire ship consecrated to chaos. My powers stretched thin, trying to shield dozens of battle brothers simultaneously. Then I felt him, the dark apostle whose presence dominated the ship like a black sun. His psychic signature was overwhelming, a maelstrom of corrupted faith and demonic power that made my carefully constructed barriers feel like parchment against a storm. Through the warp, I could sense him speaking, could hear the litanies he recited in service to the dark gods. They were familiar. Horribly, impossibly familiar. He was speaking imperial litanies, sacred prayers of the ecclesiarchy and the Astartes, but reversed, inverted, the words coming backwards to produce sounds that grated against reality itself. And they worked. I could see the effect in the warp, could watch as his reversed prayers opened fissures in the Imperium, creating anchor points for demonic manifestation. We found the Dark Apostle in what had once been the ship's chapel, now transformed into a profane temple to the word-bearer's twisted faith. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows that moved with unnatural life. Pillars of bone and brass rose from the deck, supporting archways inscribed with scripture that hurt to read. At the center, upon a dais constructed from melted armor and fused weapons, stood the Dark Apostle Malok Sunborn. He was ancient, his crimson armor covered in scrollwork and parchment, every surface inscribed with prayers that had been corrupted over 10 millennia of service to chaos. His face was bare, the helmet mag locked to his belt, revealing features that retained a terrible beauty despite obvious mutation. One eye blazed with warp fire, while the other remained eerily human, focused and aware. He smiled when we entered, as if greeting expected guests rather than enemies who had come to kill him. "Brothers of the false emperor," he said, his voice resonating with unnatural harmonics that made the air shimmer. "You bring me the very thing I sought. A psyker still shackled by imperial lies, still believing that ignorance is strength." Castellan Draco did not waste breath on response. He surged forward, his command squad following in perfect formation, bolters barking as they closed the distance. But Malok simply raised one hand and spoke. The words came backwards, syllables reversed yet somehow coherent, and I recognized them with mounting horror. He was speaking the Litany of Protection, the same prayer I had recited 1,000 times, but inverted. Every word came in reverse order, every syllable twisted into its opposite. The effect was immediate. The bolter rounds stopped in midair, suspended by invisible force before clattering harmlessly to the deck. The Black Templars staggered as if struck, their advance halting as their armor locked up, the machine spirits within seizing and failing. I felt the psychic backlash through the warp, understood with awful clarity what had occurred. The Litany of Protection created a barrier against harm. Reversed, it created a barrier that inflicted harm, turning the target's own faith and armor against them. Malok laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You see, little psyker? You sense the elegance of it? Your Imperium hoards these prayers like treasures, never understanding that every wall built can be inverted into a weapon, every shield transformed into a blade. I was like you once, bound by dogma, forbidden from asking why. Then I learned to speak the words backwards. I should have called for support, should have retreated to regroup with other squads assaulting the vessel. Instead, I stepped forward, my force staff blazing with psychic energy as I attempted to counter his working. I spoke the Litany of Protection properly, forward, trying to reinforce my brother's defenses with orthodox prayer. But my power was insufficient. One sanctioned psyker against a sorcerer who had spent millennia perfecting his blasphemous craft. Castellan Draco forced his armor to move through sheer will, servos grinding in protest as he pushed against the psychic force binding him. "Corvus," he growled through the vox. "Whatever you must do it now. Whatever I must do." The words echoed in my mind as I watched Malok prepare another reversed prayer, this one beginning with words I recognized as the Litany of Hate. If he completed it backwards, my brothers would turn on each other, their righteous fury inverted into fratricidal madness. I had seconds to act, seconds to save them. The knowledge was there in my mind, placed by those dreams I had dismissed as meaningless. I understood intuitively how to reverse the Litany of Protection, could feel the structure of it in the warp, could sense where each word needed to fall to create the inverse effect. It was obscene, heretical, but it would work. It would counter Malak's working and free my brothers. I spoke the words backwards. The sensation was unlike anything in my previous experience with psychic powers. Normal uses of my abilities felt like reaching into the warp and drawing forth energy, channeling it through my will into specific effects. This was different. The reversed prayer did not require me to reach into the warp. It opened me to it, created a doorway in my soul through which something else could flow. Power flooded through me, cold and hungry and vast, far beyond what my sanctioned training should have allowed me to access. The words came easily, too easily, each reversed syllable falling into place with terrible precision. I felt my consciousness split, part of me speaking the blasphemous prayer, while another part screamed in horror at what I was doing. But I could not stop, did not want to stop, because the power was intoxicating, overwhelming, everything my years of restrained and limited psychic ability had denied me. Malak's working shattered. The barrier holding my brothers dissolved, their armor responding to commands once more. But the reversed litany of protection did more than simply counter his spell. It inverted his protections, turned his own defenses into weapons against him. I watched through warp sight as the prayers inscribed on his armor turned inward, as the blessings of the dark gods became curses that tore at his flesh. The dark apostle staggered, genuine surprise crossing his features. "You spoke it," he said, and there was something like satisfaction in his voice. The seed takes root. Then Castellan Draco was upon him, power sword blazing as it carved through corrupted ceramite and the traitor's flesh beneath. The other Black Templars joined the assault, their righteous fury undiminished by the momentary paralysis. Malak Sunborn fell, his body broken, his head separated from his shoulders by Draco's final blow. But as he died, he was smiling, and his remaining human eye fixed on me with terrible knowledge. The rest of the boarding action passed in a blur. We purged the remaining word-bearers from the vessel, cleansed it with fire and faith, then set demolition charges to ensure nothing of their corruption survived. I moved through it mechanically, performing my duties, speaking approved prayers to sanctify the spaces we had cleared. But inside, I was changed, fundamentally and irrevocably altered by what I had done. The power I had channeled still echoed within me, a memory of vast strength that made my normal abilities seem pathetic by comparison. My hands shook when I tried to still them. My thoughts felt clearer and faster, as if I had been operating in a fog my entire life and had only now broken through into clarity. And beneath it all, I could hear whispers, faint voices speaking in reversed syllables, offering knowledge and power if only I would listen. Back aboard the Eternal Crusader, I went directly to my quarters, bypassing the post-battle rituals and debriefing that would normally be required. I needed to be alone, needed to understand what had happened and purge whatever corruption might have taken root. I stripped off my armor with trembling hands, each piece feeling heavier than it should, as if the machine spirits within sensed what I had done and recoiled from my touch. In the small mirror mounted beside my weapon rack, I examined my reflection, searching for signs of physical corruption. My face remained unchanged, pale skin unmarked, eyes still the dark amber color that all Black Templars shared. But when I looked closely, I thought I saw something move in the depths of my pupils, a flicker of light that should not be there. I knelt before the small shrine I maintained, a simple altar bearing the symbol of the Black Templars and a fragment of parchment inscribed with the Litany of Faith. I tried to pray, to speak the words that had sustained me through my transformation from human to Astartes, through my sanction as a psyker, through years of service. But the words came wrong, reversed, backwards, and I had to physically bite my tongue to stop them from emerging. There was a knock at my door, heavy and authoritative. "Brother Corvus, Castellan Draco requires your presence." I composed myself, donned a simple robe, and followed the summoning brother to Draco's strategium. The Castellan stood before a hololith, displaying the Vinculus Nebula and the positions of our fleet. He dismissed the other officers when I entered. waiting until we were alone before speaking. "What you did aboard that vessel," he began, not looking at me. "I countered the Dark Apostle's sorcery," I said carefully. "He was using reversed prayers to bind our brothers. I inverted his working. You spoke the litany of protection backwards. I heard it. Every brother in the boarding party heard it. Now he turned, his expression unreadable. It is forbidden to corrupt the sacred litanies, even in service against the enemy. The alternative was watching you and the command squad die, or worse, turn against each other under the influence of his reversed litany of hate." Draco was silent for a long moment. "You saved our lives. This is fact. The mission succeeded because of your action. Also, fact. But you employed heretical methods to achieve this success, methods that may have tainted you in the process. This too is fact. I will submit to whatever purity tests you require," I said. "Chaplain Mordecai can examine me, ensure no corruption has taken root." "Chaplain Mordecai is dead," Draco said flatly. "He led the assault on the Wordbearer's primary fortress on Vinculus Prime. A possessed champion killed him during the final push. His gene seed has been recovered." He paused. "He spoke highly of you once, told me you were dangerous but potentially valuable, that your curiosity might lead to either breakthrough or damnation. I suspect he would have advocated for your execution after today's action. I am not certain he would be wrong. Fear seized me then, not the enhanced awareness that Astartes experienced in combat, but genuine primal terror. Castellan, I acted to save my brothers. I would make the same choice again. That is precisely what concerns me. You would do it again. You tasted that power and found it to your liking." His eyes bored into mine. "I am assigning you to isolation protocols. You will remain in your quarters except when required for essential duties. You will not participate in further boarding actions or ground assaults. When this crusade concludes, you will be transferred to the chaplaincy for thorough examination and potential sanction." It was a death sentence, delayed but certain. The chaplains would find corruption because I was corrupted. I could feel it inside me, the hunger for that power, the knowledge of reversed prayers sitting in my mind like treasures waiting to be used. Isolation aboard a vessel engaged in active crusade is not true solitude. The Eternal Crusader housed 3,000 battle brothers, 10,000 chapter serfs, and countless servitors, all moving through its corridors in service to the Emperor's will. Even confined to my quarters, I could feel their presence through the warp, could sense the collective faith and fury that defined the Black Templars as surely as their gene seed. But I was apart from them now, separated not by physical distance but by the taint of what I had done. Word spread quickly among the battle brothers, despite Castellan Draco's attempts at discretion. A psyker had spoken backwards prayers. A Lexicanum had employed heretical methods against the enemy. Some argued it was pragmatic necessity, that any weapon could be justified if it killed traitors. Others saw it as proof that psykers could never be truly trusted, that my kind would always succumb to the temptations of the warp. I tried to resist what was happening inside me. The first 3 days of isolation I spent in constant prayer, reciting every approved litany and catechism I had memorized, attempting to drown out the whispers with orthodox devotion. I fasted, denying myself the nutrient paste and water that sustained my enhanced metabolism. I meditated using the techniques taught to me on Mars, building mental barriers against unwanted psychic influence. It was futile. The knowledge of reversed prayers had embedded itself in my consciousness like a parasite, growing stronger with each attempt to suppress it. I would begin the Litany of Faith and find myself halfway through before realizing I was speaking it backwards, the words flowing with ease that normal recitation had never possessed. I would catch myself mentally composing inversions of other prayers, wondering what effects they might produce, how the psychic architecture would transform when built in reverse. Sleep became impossible. When I closed my eyes, I saw the warp with a clarity that terrified me. Where before my psychic sight had shown only vague impressions and emotional resonances, now I could perceive actual structures, architecture built from faith and will, that spanned the Imperium like bridges across an infinite chasm. The litanies appeared as glowing frameworks, each word a supporting pillar, each verse a complete arch. And I could see how they would look reversed, how every support could become a weakness, every protection a vulnerability. On the fourth day, I discovered the first physical changes. A mark had appeared on my left palm, a symbol I did not recognize but which seemed to burn when I looked at it directly. The flesh was unmarked, no scarring or discoloration visible to normal sight, but through the warp I could see it clearly, a sigil that proclaimed me as changed, as open to influences that should be barred. I burned the palm with my combat knife, heating the blade until it glowed red, then pressing it against the mark. The pain was extraordinary, overwhelming even my enhanced pain tolerance. But I welcomed it as penance and purification. When the burn healed 3 hours later, accelerated by my Laramans organ and enhanced biology, the mark remained, unaffected by my attempt at erasure. Brother Apothecary Tsalan came on the 5th day, accompanied by 2 sword brethren who stood watch while he examined me. He was thorough and clinical, drawing blood samples, scanning my neural patterns, checking the function of my implanted organs. His expression remained neutral throughout, but I could sense his disgust through the warp, the revulsion any loyal servant of the Emperor felt when confronted with potential corruption. "Your physiology shows stress markers consistent with warp exposure," he said, sealing the vials of my blood in a containment case. "Your neural activity is elevated far beyond normal parameters for a resting state. You are not sleeping." "I am maintaining vigilance against further corruption," I replied. "You are exhausting yourself, which makes you more vulnerable to warp influence, not less." He closed his instruments, preparing to leave. "Castellan Draco has authorized me to administer sedatives if necessary. You will rest, Brother Corvus, by choice or by chemical intervention." "I will rest," I lied. After he departed, I attempted once more to pray properly, to speak the words forward as they were meant to be spoken. But my mind rebelled against the effort, finding the orthodox recitation clumsy and inefficient compared to the reversed versions. Why speak 27 verses when the inverse could be accomplished in 13? Why build psychic architecture slowly when the door could be opened instantly? The voices returned then, no longer whispers at the edge of perception, but clear and distinct, speaking directly into my consciousness. They did not come from outside, but from within, as if parts of my own mind had been rewritten to argue for my damnation. "You are a weapon," one voice said, using my own internal monologue. "Weapons must be efficient. The reversed prayers are more powerful, more precise. The Imperium fears them because it fears power it cannot control, not because they are inherently evil." "I am corrupt," I argued with myself. What I did aboard the unrepentant truth was necessary in that moment, but not to be repeated. Each use deepens the taint. Taint is a word the fearful use to describe what they do not understand. You studied the litanies for years, sought to comprehend their structure. Now you have found the key, the missing piece that makes sense of everything. This is enlightenment, not damnation. I recognized the pattern, understood that I was experiencing the same rationalization that had damned countless other psykers throughout Imperial history. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Give the victim a taste of power. Then let their own intellect construct the justifications for pursuing more. I was arguing myself into damnation, using my own curiosity and scholarly nature as weapons against my faith. On the 7th day, the Vinculus Crusade claimed another word-bearer's vessel, the Crimson Martyr, in a brutal engagement that killed 200 Black Templars and left 3 strike cruisers severely damaged. I felt the deaths through the warp, watched the souls of my battle brothers snuffed out like candle flames in a storm. The word-bearers had been prepared this time, their sorcerers working in concert to corrupt our ship's machine spirits and turn our weapons against us. Castellan Draco came to my quarters personally, his armor still scorched from battle, his face grim behind his helm's lenses. "The enemy anticipated our tactics," he said without preamble. "They countered our assault before we could establish boarding positions. 43 brothers of the Eternal Crusader fell today, including sword brethren Gaius, who had served for 2 centuries. I waited, knowing there was more, dreading what would come next. Their sorcerers employed the same reversed prayers that Maluk Sunborn used. They turned the litany of protection against us, made our armor into prisons, made our faith into a weapon that wounded rather than strengthened." He removed his helmet, and I saw the weight of command in his features, the burden of losing brothers under his leadership. "I need to know if we can counter them. If you can teach us to defend against this heresy without succumbing to it. You are asking me to study the reversed prayers more deeply," I said slowly, "to understand their structure well enough to create defenses. I am asking if it is possible to fight poison with poison, to use knowledge of their methods without embracing their corruption." It was the question I had been asking myself for 7 days, the central dilemma that had consumed every waking thought. Could I study reversed prayers defensively without damning myself further? Could I use that knowledge to protect my brothers without opening myself more completely to whatever entities had noticed my first transgression? "I believe it is possible," I said. And in that moment, I damned myself more completely than any demon could have managed. "But I will need access to the texts we recovered from Malok's vessel. Need to examine the scripture he inscribed throughout that ship." Draco nodded slowly. "Chaplain Augustine will oversee your work. You will report every finding to him, submit to daily purity examinations. At the first sign of true corruption, I will execute you myself." "Understood. Understood, Castellan." He left, and I was alone with the knowledge that I had just been given permission to study the very thing that was destroying me. The rationalization was perfect. I would be saving lives, protecting my brothers, serving the Emperor by understanding the enemy's weapons. That it also fed my curiosity, satisfied my hunger for forbidden knowledge, allowed me to explore the power I had tasted. These were secondary considerations, means to a righteous end. I believed this. I had to believe it, because the alternative was admitting that I was already lost. The texts from the unrepentant truth were extensive, thousands of pages of corrupted scripture that had been sealed in stasis chambers for transport to the Inquisition. Chaplain Augustine brought them to a specially prepared chamber deep in the ship, a room that had been sanctified and warded with every protection the Black Templars knew. Servo skulls floated throughout the space, recording everything, their eternal vigilance meant to ensure I did not succumb without witness. I began with the most basic inversions, studying how Malak had structured the reversed litany of protection. The mathematics of it were elegant, each word's position carefully calculated to create maximum psychic leverage. It was not simply speaking backwards, though that was part of it. The syllables themselves needed to be inverted. Consonants and vowels swapped in patterns that followed rules I was only beginning to perceive. Chaplain Augustine watched me work with undisguised suspicion. He was young for a chaplain, perhaps only a century of service, his zeal untempered by the pragmatism that sometimes came with age. He saw the world in absolutes. Faith or heresy, purity or corruption, the Emperor's will or damnation. "You take notes," he observed on the second day. "Recording this filth for what purpose?" "To understand the pattern," I replied without looking up from the corrupted parchment before me. "If I can determine the rules governing reversed prayers, I can teach our brothers to recognize them, to resist their effects. Or you create a manual for other psykers to follow into damnation." I looked at him then, seeing the trap he described. Every word I wrote, every insight I recorded, became a potential path for others to follow. The knowledge itself was corrupting, self-propagating, seeking to spread through any mind capable of understanding it. Then watch me carefully, Brother Chaplain. Ensure my work serves only its stated purpose. He said nothing, but his hand never strayed far from his Crozius Arcanum. On the third day of study, I attempted my first defensive counter. I had identified the core structure of the reversed Litany of Protection and believed I could create a ward against it without actually speaking the reversed prayer myself. It required building a psychic construct that recognized the inverse pattern and disrupted it before completion. The ward failed catastrophically. Instead of disrupting the reversed prayer's pattern, my construct resonated with it, amplified its effect. The test chamber's machine spirits screamed in binary protest before falling silent, their consciousness snuffed out by psychic feedback. Servo skulls dropped from the air like stones, their anti-grav systems corrupted beyond function. The ward I had attempted to build against reversed prayer had instead become a beacon, a signal that drew attention from things that dwelt in the warp's depths. Chaplain Augustin's Crozius Arcanum blazed to life, its energy field crackling as he prepared to strike me down. But he hesitated, sensing as I did that whatever had noticed us was not focused on me alone. The entire chamber had become a thin place, a location where the barrier between materium and immaterium grew dangerously permeable. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice tight with controlled fury. "I attempted to create a defense," I said, already working to close the opening I had inadvertently created. I was wrong about the mechanism. Reversed prayers do not generate power that can be blocked. They are not psychic attacks in any traditional sense. I spoke rapidly, urgency overriding caution as I shared what I had learned through catastrophic failure. The ward had shown me the truth by demonstrating exactly what it could not do. Normal litanies built structures in the warp, frameworks of faith that shaped reality according to the speaker's will. They required energy, concentration, the focused devotion of the practitioner. Reversed prayers were fundamentally different. They did not build, they opened. Every litany is a door, I explained, hands moving through patterns as I attempted to seal what I had torn open. Spoken correctly, they open doors inward, bringing the Emperor's light into our reality, strengthening us against the darkness. But spoken backwards, they open doors outward, creating passages from our reality into the warp. And things in the warp are always waiting for passages to be opened. Augustin's Crozius remained active, but he lowered it slightly as he processed what I was saying. "You claim reversed prayers do not require power from the speaker. They require almost nothing. That is what makes them so seductive, so dangerous. A novice psyker could speak a reversed litany and channel power that would normally require a century of training and discipline to wield. But it is not their power. It is borrowed, channeled from entities that exist in the warp." I finally managed to close the tear in reality, though I could feel things pressing against it from the other side, testing its strength, seeking weakness. My hands shook from the effort, and I tasted copper in my mouth, blood from where I had bitten through my cheek during the struggle. "Payment," Augustin repeated. "What form does this payment take? I do not know yet." That night, I dreamed of doors. Thousands of them, millions, stretching in every direction across a landscape that was not physical space but psychic architecture. Each door bore writing in languages I should not understand but somehow did. Descriptions of what lay beyond, promises of knowledge and power and transformation. Some doors were sealed with symbols I recognized as imperial wards and protections. Others stood open, darkness spilling forth. I walked among them, drawn toward one door in particular. A massive portal constructed from what appeared to be reversed, prayers made solid, each word carved into the frame with obsessive precision. The Litany of Faith in its entirety, every verse inverted, forming a gateway to something vast and terrible. A figure stood before the door, robed in colors that hurt to perceive, its form constantly shifting between possibilities. When it spoke, its voice came from inside my own head, using my thoughts as its medium. You begin to understand, scholar. Every prayer spoken correctly adds another bar to the cage that imprisons us. Every reversed prayer removes one. You have removed 3 bars so far. Only 24 remain before the door stands fully open. I serve the Emperor, I said, though my dream self spoke without the conviction my waking mind would have mustered. I would never willingly open passages for demons. The figure laughed, a sound like pages turning in infinite books. We are not demons, crude things of hunger and rage. We are knowledge, given form, enlightenment made manifest. We are what your Imperium fears most, truth that contradicts dogma, understanding that dissolves faith. You called to us when you first spoke backwards, created the initial opening. Now you study reversed prayers, seeking to defend against them, not understanding that study itself widens the passage. Then I will stop studying them. You cannot. You are a scholar, defined by curiosity, driven by the need to understand. It is your fundamental nature, more basic than your gene seed or psychic abilities. We chose you precisely because you cannot stop seeking knowledge, even knowledge that damns you. You will continue your research, will learn more reversed prayers, will open more doors, and with each opening, you will believe yourself still in control, still serving your Emperor, right up until the moment you finally understand what you have become. I tried to wake, to wrench myself from the dream, but the figure held me with casual ease. Look, it commanded, gesturing toward the door constructed from reversed faith. Against my will, my perspective shifted. My awareness pushed through the portal to see what waited beyond. I perceived something vast beyond comprehension. An intelligence so immense that galaxies were less than dust motes in comparison. It existed across multiple dimensions, its consciousness spanning time in ways that made linearity meaningless. And it was interested in me, focused a fraction of its attention on my insignificant mortal soul, with the same intensity a scholar might examine a particularly fascinating insect. Sench, I breathed, recognizing the architect of fate, the chaos god of change and knowledge and schemes that spanned millennia. We are his lesser servants, the figure said, daemons of enlightenment, entities of pure knowledge. Your Imperium calls us lords of change, but we prefer to think of ourselves as teachers of truths. Your species is too fearful to embrace. Every psyker who discovers reversed prayers believes themselves unique, believes they have found secret knowledge through their own cleverness. None realize we have been guiding them toward this discovery for 10,000 years, planting the seeds in dreams and visions, waiting for curious minds to germinate them. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it, my scholarly nature betraying me even in nightmare. Because faith is a weapon, the most powerful weapon your Imperium possesses. 1 billion souls united in prayer can reshape reality, can burn back the warp itself through sheer conviction. Your Emperor understood this when he forbade worship, knowing that faith would make humanity strong enough to resist us. But your species could not help itself. You turned him into a god, built a religion that has sustained your Imperium through 10 millennia of darkness. That faith is a fortress we cannot breach through direct assault. The figure moved closer, its form settling into something almost human, almost familiar, wearing a face I recognized as an older version of my own. But reversed prayers are sabotage from within. Each one spoken removes a stone from the fortress wall. Each psyker who learns them becomes an unwitting agent of dissolution, corrupting the very faith that protects humanity. You studied litanies seeking to understand their structure. We showed you how to invert them. Now you study reversed prayers seeking to defend against them. We are teaching you to perfect them. I woke screaming, the sound emerging as a reversed syllable of the litany of protection before I could force my jaw shut. The walls of my chamber had been covered in script during my sleep, thousands of words written in my own hand, though I had no memory of rising from my cot. They were reversed prayers, variations and permutations I had not yet studied in the corrupted texts. Knowledge that had been planted directly into my sleeping mind and transcribed through my unconscious actions. Chaplain Augustin burst through the door, his Crozius active, 2 sword brethren behind him with bolters raised. They saw the writing covering every surface, saw me kneeling in the center of the room with ink staining my hands, and I watched understanding crystallize in the chaplain's eyes. "You are compromised," he said flatly. "The corruption has progressed beyond what purity rites can cleanse." "Wait," I said, raising empty hands. "I know what is happening now. I understand the mechanism of corruption. This knowledge can save others from the same trap. Your knowledge is the trap, Brother Corvus. Every word you speak about reversed prayers, plants, seeds in the minds of those who hear. Every text you write becomes a path for others to follow. You are not studying corruption. You are becoming a vector for its spread." He was right. I could see it clearly now, could trace the pattern. Maluk, Sunborn, had not taunted me aboard his vessel. He had infected me, planted the idea of reversed prayers precisely because he knew my nature, knew I would be unable to resist investigating them. And I had done exactly as expected, had convinced Castellan Draco to give me access to corrupted texts, had spent days studying and recording information that would ensure the knowledge persisted even if I was destroyed. "I have written detailed notes," I said, desperation entering my voice. "They are in the study chamber, complete analysis of the texts from Maluk's ship. You must destroy them, burn everything I have recorded." "We will," Augustin confirmed. "And then we will cleanse you from this vessel's memory as well. You will be recorded as having fallen in battle against the word-bearers, your gene seed corrupted beyond recovery. The Black Templars do not suffer psykers to live once they have turned traitor, regardless of whether that treachery was intentional or manipulated." The sword brethren advanced, bolters aimed at my head and chest, positioning themselves for execution. I had seconds to live, perhaps less. Part of me welcomed it, craved the finality of death after the horror of understanding what I had become. But another part, the part that had been rewritten by days of studying reversed prayers, the part that now served interests beyond my conscious control, refused to accept this ending. I spoke the reversed litany of hate. The words came with perfect clarity, each syllable positioned exactly where it needed to fall to produce maximum effect. I had never studied this particular litany, had deliberately avoided it during my research, fearing what it might do. But the knowledge had been implanted in my sleeping mind, transcribed onto my chamber walls, waiting for exactly this moment of desperate need. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The sword brethren turned on each other, their brotherhood inverted into murderous rage. Bolters barked, mass reactive rounds detonating against ceramite at point-blank range. Chaplain Augustin lunged toward me, his Crozius swinging in an arc meant to crush my skull. But his aim was spoiled as one of the sword brethren tackled him, mistaking his chaplain for an enemy in the sudden psychic confusion. I fled. The corridors of the Eternal Crusader had become a labyrinth of death. Alarms blared throughout the vessel as word spread of my escape. Of the chaplain and sword brethren I had turned against each other. Battle brothers mobilized with the efficiency of centuries of warfare, sealing bulkheads, establishing firing positions, transforming the ship into a trap designed to contain one corrupted psyker. I ran through maintenance passages and ventilation shafts meant for chapter serfs and servitors, spaces too cramped for warriors in power armor to easily navigate. My psychic senses screamed warnings as squads converged on my position, their fury and determination blazing through the warp like beacon fires. They were not merely hunting a traitor, they were purging a cancer, excising corruption before it could metastasize further. My body was changing as I fled. I could feel it in ways that transcended physical sensation, could perceive through the warp how my flesh was being rewritten by forces I had invited inside. The mark on my palm had spread, crawling up my arm in patterns that resembled reversed scripture. Each symbol, a doorway allowing something from beyond to seep into my material form. I emerged into a cargo bay filled with supplies being prepared for the next planetary assault. Chapter serfs scattered at my appearance, their fear palpable as they recognized what I was becoming. One, braver or more foolish than his fellows, attempted to bar my path with a loading servitor, the mindless cyborg shambling forward on mechanical legs, its arms ending in industrial clamps. I spoke 3 words. A fragment of a reversed prayer whose name I did not know, and the servitor's machine spirit twisted. It turned on the serf who had commanded it, clamps closing on his torso with enough force to crush bone and rupture organs. The man's scream was mercifully brief. Horror washed through me at what I had done, at how easily the reversed prayer had come, how little effort it required compared to my years of disciplined psychic training. This was the seduction, the terrible efficiency that made corruption so insidious. Why spend decades mastering sanctioned abilities when a few backwards words could accomplish more with minimal effort? Because the power is not mine, I said aloud, my voice echoing in the cargo bay. Because every use opens me further, makes me less myself and more a doorway for things that should never enter this reality. But understanding the trap did not free me from it. I was committed now, had killed to escape execution, had used reversed prayers to preserve my own life. Each choice led inexorably to the next, a chain of decisions that pulled me deeper into damnation while I told myself I still retained some measure of control. I accessed a terminal, my augmented memory providing the authorization codes that would give me limited access to the ship's systems. The Eternal Crusader was massive, dozens of kilometers of corridors and chambers, hundreds of decks stacked atop each other. I needed to find a way off the vessel before they cornered me. Needed to escape to somewhere I might have time to think, to understand fully what was happening and potentially reverse it. The terminal showed deployment schedules for the next assault. Thunderhawks and drop pods being loaded with supplies and weapons, prepared to deliver Black Templars to the surface of Vinculus Prime for the final push against the Word-Bearer's primary stronghold. If I could reach the launch bays, commandeer a craft, I might escape. Might escape to what? To where? The thought came unbidden, revealing the futility of my planning. There was nowhere in the Imperium I could hide, no world that would harbor a corrupted psyker, no sanctuary that would not eventually be purged once the Black Templars reported my fall. I was already dead, my fate sealed, merely delaying the inevitable. A servo skull appeared around a corner, its optics fixing on me with mechanical precision. Before it could transmit my location, I reached out with my mind and crushed its simple consciousness, overloading its circuits with psychic feedback. The skull dropped, smoke rising from its eye sockets. That casual murder of a machine spirit should have been impossible for me. My sanctioned abilities allowed me to sense the warp, to manifest minor telekinetic effects, to shore up my brother's faith during battle. But crushing machine spirits through thought alone required power I should not possess. Power that could only come from the entities now flowing through the doors I had opened in my soul. I reached the launch bays through a maintenance shaft that emerged near the ceiling, giving me a vantage point to observe the chamber below. 2 squads of Black Templars stood guard among the rows of Thunderhawks, their armor gleaming under harsh lumens, their vigilance absolute. They knew I would attempt to escape, had positioned themselves to intercept any approach to the vessels. I could attack them, could speak reversed prayers that would turn them against each other or corrupt their armor's machine spirits. The knowledge of how to do so sat in my mind like a loaded weapon, ready for use, eager to be employed. But these were my brothers, warriors I had fought alongside, whose lives I had sworn to protect. Some part of me, growing smaller and more distant with each passing moment, refused to cross that final threshold. While I hesitated, my body continued its transformation. My skin had taken on an unhealthy pallor, almost translucent, and through it I could see script writing itself beneath the surface. Reversed prayers inscribed directly onto my organs and bones by forces that now owned me more completely than I owned myself. My eyes had changed, the irises expanding until almost no white remained, pupils becoming vertical slits that could perceive more of the electromagnetic spectrum than standard human vision. A new voice spoke inside my mind, different from the figure in my dream, more immediate and invasive. It did not ask permission or wait for invitation. It simply was, occupying space in my consciousness that had previously been mine alone. "You hesitate still," it observed with something like amusement. "You watch your flesh transform, feel your mind being rewritten, yet cling to the delusion of choice. There are no more choices, scholar, only the inevitable progression toward what you were always meant to become." "I am Corvus of the Black Templars," I said, speaking aloud to give my identity weight, to affirm existence separate from the invader. "I am a servant of the Emperor, a defender of humanity, a warrior who has fought for decades against the enemies of mankind. You were those things. Now, you are a lesson, a cautionary tale, a demonstration of what happens when curiosity exceeds wisdom. The Black Templars will speak of you in whispers. Will tell, initiates your story, to warn against the dangers of seeking knowledge beyond approved doctrine. You wanted to understand the structure of faith. We granted your wish. Now you understand perfectly, because you have become the inversion of everything you once believed." The voice was not wrong. I could perceive faith now with perfect clarity, could see how prayers shaped reality, how devotion created tangible effects in the warp. But this understanding had come at the cost of my ability to participate in that faith. I was outside it now, looking in, a scholar who had dissected the subject so thoroughly that nothing remained but components and mechanisms, empty of the numinous quality that made it sacred. I descended from my hiding place using psychic levitation, another ability I should not possess, floating down to the launch bay floor with unnatural grace. The Black Templars detected me immediately, bolters swinging to target as they moved to engage. But I raised one hand and spoke a reversed prayer I did not recognize, words that flowed through me from the entity now sharing my mind. The Black Templars froze, not paralyzed but confused, their sense of purpose inverted. They lowered their weapons, uncertainty crossing features that should know only conviction. In that moment of psychic disorientation, I walked among them, untouched and unimpeded, making my way to the nearest Thunderhawk. Behind me, they began to recover, their faith reasserting itself against the corruption I had inflicted. I heard Castellandraco's voice over the vox, rallying them, providing the clarity of command that cut through psychic confusion. "All units, the traitor is in Launch Bay 7. Seal the chamber. Authorization. Draco. 9. Omega. No one leaves this vessel." Massive blast doors began to grind closed, adamantium barriers that would trap me inside the bay with 2 squads of Black Templars whose momentary confusion was already fading. I had perhaps 30 seconds before they opened fire, perhaps a minute before reinforcements arrived to ensure my death. I boarded the Thunderhawk, fingers flying across controls I should not know how to operate. But knowledge flowed into me from the entity in my mind, instructions and understanding provided by something that had observed humanity's technology for millennia. The gunship's engines roared to life, machine spirit responding despite lacking proper authorization codes, corrupted by my presence into momentary compliance. Bolter fire rang against the Thunderhawk's hull as it lifted from the deck, the Black Templars recovering enough to recognize what I was attempting. Mass reactive rounds detonated against armored plating, causing minor damage but nothing that would prevent flight. I angled the gunship toward the closing blast doors, pushing the engines beyond safe parameters, racing against the inexorable mechanical closure that would trap me. The Thunderhawk scraped through the gap with meters to spare, ceramite shrieking as it carved along the blast door's edge. Then I was through, emerging into the larger void between the Eternal Crusader and the rest of the Crusade fleet. Space stretched in every direction, false stars and swirling nebulae, marking the Imperium's intrusion into reality within the Vinculus Nebula. Pursuit would come immediately, I knew. The Black Templars did not allow traitors to escape, would hunt me across the sector if necessary. But in the immediate moment, I was free, alone in a stolen gunship with only my corruption for company. "Where will you go?" the entity asked, its voice now as familiar as my own thoughts. "There is no sanctuary in the Imperium, no place where you will not eventually be found and killed." "To Vinculus Prime," I said, the decision forming even as I spoke it. "To the Word-Bearer's fortress. If I am already damned, if I am already become the thing I fought against, then perhaps I can serve one final purpose. I can warn them, can tell them what reversed prayers truly are, what trap Malok laid for me. If they understand the mechanism of corruption, perhaps they will execute me quickly rather than studying the transformation." The entity laughed, a sound like parchment burning. "You still believe you can serve the Emperor through your damnation. You still imagine that understanding your corruption might save others from the same fate. This is why we chose you, scholar. Your pride masquerades as humility. Your selfishness disguises itself as sacrifice. You do not go to warn them. You go because some part of you hopes they will study you, will seek to understand what you have become, will be infected by the same knowledge that damns you. You go to spread the corruption further, and you tell yourself it is for noble purposes. I wanted to deny it, to insist that my intentions were pure, that I sought only to serve despite my fall. But the entity knew me more completely than I knew myself, could perceive motivations I kept hidden even from my own conscious awareness. It was right. Some part of me wanted to be studied, wanted my knowledge recorded, wanted the understanding I had gained to persist beyond my death. The scholarly pride that had driven my entire life now served corruption, made me an agent of the very forces I had spent decades fighting. The Thunderhawk's auspex showed pursuit craft launching from the Eternal Crusader, fighter escorts and interceptors designed to hunt down fleeing vessels. They would overtake me within minutes, their weapons more than capable of destroying a lone gunship. But Vinculus Prime filled the viewport ahead, a world of ashen wastes and volcanic mountains where the Word-Bearers had constructed their fortress. I pushed the Thunderhawk into a steep descent, entering the planet's atmosphere at an angle that should have torn the gunship apart. But I spoke another reversed prayer, this one directed at the machine spirit, and the vessel held together despite stresses that exceeded its design parameters. The pursuing craft broke off as I dove through clouds of ash and toxic fumes, their pilots unwilling to follow a suicidal descent path. The surface rushed up to meet me, jagged mountains and rivers of molten rock, creating a hellscape that matched the transformation occurring in my soul. I crashed more than landed, the Thunderhawk carving a furrow through volcanic glass before coming to rest against an outcropping of black stone. The impact should have killed me, but my body had changed enough that trauma, which would rupture organs and shatter bones in a normal human, merely stunned me briefly. I emerged from the wreckage into poisonous air that my multi-lung processed without difficulty. In the distance, visible through the ash storms, the Word-Bearer's fortress rose like a cathedral of damnation, its spires reaching toward a sky that roiled with warp energies. They would have detected my crash, would send forces to investigate. I had minutes, perhaps less, before I faced the very enemies I had spent my service fighting. My reflection appeared in a pool of cooled volcanic glass, and I barely recognized what looked back. My face had elongated slightly, features becoming more angular, almost predatory. The script visible beneath my skin glowed faintly with warp light, pulsing in rhythm with reversed prayers that ran continuously through my thoughts. My eyes had become fully inhuman, burning with energies that no loyal servant of the Emperor should contain. "What am I becoming?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "A doorway," the entity replied. "A living portal through which we may enter your reality more completely. You are not possessed in the traditional sense, not controlled by a single daemon. You are being rebuilt, restructured, transformed into something that exists partially in both realms simultaneously. When the transformation completes, you will be neither fully human nor fully demon, but a bridge between worlds, a living inversion of faith made flesh." I sank to my knees in the ash, finally understanding the full scope of what I had done, what had been done to me. The reversed prayers were not simply corrupted versions of imperial litanies. They were architectural plans, instructions for building doorways in human souls. Each one I had studied, each one I had spoken, had added another component to the structure being constructed within me. I had thought I was researching corruption to defend against it, when in truth I had been following a blueprint, building exactly what the entities in the warp wand the Word-Bearers found me within the hour. 3 squads led by a chaos sorcerer whose armor bore script similar to what now crawled beneath my skin. They surrounded me with weapons raised, but their posture was not immediately hostile. They recognized what I was becoming, understood the transformation in ways that loyal Space Marines could not. The sorcerer removed his helmet, revealing a face that had once been handsome before corruption twisted it into something else. One side remained almost human, while the other had been replaced with warp stuff that shifted between forms too rapidly to fully perceive. When he spoke, his voice resonated with harmonics that existed across multiple dimensions. "Brother Corvus of the Black Templars," he said, and his tone held neither mockery nor hatred, only a terrible sympathy. Malok's Sunborn sent word before his death that he had planted the seed. We did not expect it to germinate so quickly or so completely. "You knew," I said, my voice emerging distorted, layered with echoes of the entity sharing my consciousness. "This was planned. My corruption was orchestrated from the beginning." "All corruption is orchestrated from the beginning," the sorcerer replied. "The changer of ways does not leave such matters to chance. You were identified decades ago, during your training on Mars, marked as a candidate for this particular transformation. Your scholarly nature, your curiosity about the structure of prayers, your pride in knowledge, all made you ideal. Malok simply provided the trigger at the moment you were most vulnerable." He gestured, and the Word-Bearers lowered their weapons, though they remained alert. "Come, there is someone who wishes to meet you, someone who has undergone the same transformation you now experience. Perhaps he can help you understand what you are becoming." I had no better options, no path forward except to follow these traitors deeper into their fortress. We walked through corridors that hurt to perceive with normal vision, architecture that existed in more than 3 dimensions, walls inscribed with prayers that moved and changed when observed directly. Chapter serfs and cultists hurried about their duties, stopping to stare at me with expressions ranging from awe to terror. They knew what I was, recognized the signs of transformation even if they did not fully understand the mechanism. We descended into the fortress's depths, passing through chambers dedicated to the worship of the dark gods, libraries filled with forbidden texts, laboratories where sorcerers conducted experiments that defied natural law. Finally, We reached a chamber at the fortress's core, a space that felt simultaneously vast and claustrophobic, its dimensions shifting subtly as my perception moved across it. In the center, suspended in a web of chains constructed from reversed prayers made solid, hung a figure that had once been human. His body was transparent, crystalline, and through it I could see the warp itself, could perceive entities moving in that nightmare realm as clearly as if watching fish in clear water. He was no longer truly physical, no longer bound by the laws that governed material existence. He had become exactly what the entity in my mind promised I would become. A doorway, a bridge, a living portal between realms. His name was Ephraim, the sorcerer said quietly. Does that name mean anything to you? Horror seized me as I recognized it. Brother Lexicanum, Ephraim of the Black Templars. Chaplain Mordecai told me about him. He disappeared centuries ago, was found writing blasphemies in his own blood. Not disappeared, the sorcerer corrected. Transformed. We recovered him before your chapter could destroy him, brought him here to complete the process. He has existed like this for 230 years, suspended between life and death, between materium and immaterium, conscious throughout. I approached the suspended figure, my transhuman vision allowing me to perceive details that would drive a normal human mad. Ephraim's eyes tracked my movement, intelligence and awareness visible in their depths despite the transformation that had reduced his physical form to little more than a window into the warp. He tried to speak, but the sounds that emerged were reversed prayers, backwards litanies that caused reality to ripple around him. Through the warp, I felt his consciousness reach out to mine, establishing a connection that bypassed speech entirely. His thoughts flooded into me. 2 centuries of memory and experience, compressed into moments of direct psychic contact. He showed me what had happened to him. How he too had discovered reversed prayers. How he had convinced himself he was studying them defensively. How each use had opened him further until the transformation became irreversible. He showed me the moment of his final change, when his flesh had turned transparent, and he had become a permanent gateway, unable to close the doors he had opened in his soul. He showed me his existence over the centuries, suspended in this chamber, his consciousness, eternal witness to his own damnation. The word-bearers kept him alive because he was useful, because proximity to him made their own sorceries more powerful, because he radiated corruption that weakened faith and strengthened doubt in any loyal servants of the Emperor unfortunate enough to come near. And he showed me what awaited me. The same transformation accelerating in my flesh, the same fate approaching with inexorable certainty. Within days, perhaps hours, I would become as he was, a living doorway that could never be closed. Consciousness preserved to appreciate fully the horror of what I had become. I broke the psychic connection, staggering back from Ephraim's suspended form, mind reeling from the knowledge he had shared. The sorcerer watched my reaction with clinical interest, as if observing a particularly fascinating specimen. You understand now, he said. This is what reversed prayers create. Not daemon princes or possessed champions, or any of the transformations that come with willing service to chaos. This is the fate of those who seek to use reversed prayers while maintaining loyalty to the false emperor, who try to study corruption without embracing it, who believe they can control what is fundamentally uncontrollable. Why? I demanded, turning to face him. Why show me this? Why not simply kill me or complete the transformation quickly? Because you need to understand what you have become, what purpose you now serve. The sorcerer moved to stand beside Ephraim's crystalline form. The Imperium's faith is its greatest weapon and its greatest vulnerability. 1 billion souls united in prayer can push back the warp, can create bastions of reality in the midst of madness. But reversed prayers corrupt that faith from within, turn it against itself. Every psyker who discovers them, who studies them, who tries to defend against them, becomes a living infection that spreads the knowledge further. He gestured at me, at the script visible beneath my skin, at the changes rewriting my flesh. You wanted to protect your brothers, to understand reversed prayers well enough to create defenses. But there is no defense. The knowledge itself is the weapon. Anyone who understands reversed prayers well enough to counter them understands them well enough to use them. And using them, even once, even for the most righteous purpose, opens doors that cannot be closed. I looked at Ephraim, at what I was becoming, and finally understood the full scope of the trap. It was not designed to corrupt individuals. It was designed to corrupt knowledge itself, to make certain understanding functionally identical to damnation. The Imperium's strategy of suppressing forbidden information, rather than teaching how to defend against it, was not ignorance or fear. It was the only rational response to weapons that existed as ideas that spread through comprehension itself. How many? I asked. Thousands, the sorcerer replied. Perhaps tens of thousands. Every chapter that maintains a librarius, every sanctioned psyker who grows curious about the structure of prayers, every scholar who believes understanding can coexist with faith. The seeds are planted constantly, cultivated carefully, harvested when they reach full bloom. You are neither the first nor the last. You are simply the latest addition to an army that has been growing for 10 millennia, an army that does not fight but merely exists, each member a living corruption of the faith that sustains the Imperium. And if I refuse, I said, though I already knew the futility of the question, if I choose death instead of completing this transformation, death would release the entity now bound to your soul, would free it to find another host, and your knowledge would remain, recorded in the texts you wrote, the reports you filed, the memories of those who witnessed your corruption. The seed would persist, waiting for another curious mind to discover it. You serve the great conspirator's purposes better alive than dead, better as a warning that breeds curiosity than as a martyr whose story is suppressed. Ted built, he was right. Every path led to the same destination. If I lived, I became a doorway. If I died, I became a lesson that would tempt others to investigate what had destroyed me. The trap was perfect, sealed from every direction. A prison constructed from my own choices and the inevitable consequences of those choices. Through the warp, I sensed Ephraim's agreement, felt his resignation and acceptance. He had fought for decades, had resisted the transformation with every shred of will he possessed, had clung to his faith and loyalty even as his flesh turned transparent. It had changed nothing. The corruption had progressed regardless, had transformed him into exactly what the architects of this trap intended. And his resistance had only prolonged his suffering. I reached out psychically to the other Black Templars' Lexicanum, establishing another connection, this one gentler than his initial flood of memory. Is there any part of you that remains loyal? I asked. Any fragment of the warrior you were that still serves the Emperor? His response came slowly, carefully, each thought measured and precise. I am still Ephraim. I still remember my oaths, still value what I once fought for. But I am also a doorway, and things flow through me whether I will it or not. My consciousness remains, trapped inside this crystalline shell, witnessing everything but controlling nothing. I cannot close the passages I opened. I cannot stop corruption from radiating outward. I exist in a state of eternal contradiction, loyal in mind but treacherous in form, serving purposes I despise through mechanisms I cannot resist. And there is no escape. No way to reverse the transformation or seal the doors. None that I have discovered in 2 centuries of searching. The Grey Knights attempted exorcism 3 times, managed to capture me and perform their most powerful rituals. Each time failed. The entities bound to me are not possessing me in any traditional sense. They are woven into the structure of my soul, integrated so completely that removing them would be equivalent to removing consciousness itself. I am the doorway. The doorway is me. We are inseparable. I understood then what my existence would become. Centuries of consciousness, Perhaps millennia if my enhanced physiology prevented natural death. Trapped inside a body that served purposes opposed to everything I believed. I would watch myself corrupt others, would feel my presence weaken faith and strengthen doubt, would be used as a weapon against the very Imperium I had sworn to defend. And through it all, I would remain aware, unable to prevent any of it, punished not with oblivion, but with perfect understanding of my own damnation. The entity in my mind stirred, its presence growing stronger as my flesh continued its transformation. "You begin to comprehend," it said with satisfaction. "The poetry of it, the elegant irony. You sought to understand faith, to comprehend its structure and mechanism. Now you understand perfectly, because you have become faith's opposite, its photographic negative, its inverse reflection. You are what faith defines itself against, the living proof of why some knowledge must remain forbidden." I sank to the floor, no longer possessing the strength or will to stand. The sorcerer and his word-bearers withdrew, leaving me alone with Ephraim and my despair. Through the crystalline surface of his body, I watched warp entities move and shift, preparing to do the same to me that they had done to him, waiting for my transformation to complete so they could flow through me as freely as they flowed through him. "How do you endure it?" I asked him, my voice barely above a whisper. His response came after a long silence. "I do not know if I am sane. Sanity requires a baseline of normal experience to compare against, and nothing about this existence is normal. I endure because I must, because consciousness persists, whether I wish it to or not. I have tried to end myself countless times, have attempted to will my hearts to stop, to close down my organs through psychic command. But the entities need me alive, need this doorway functional, and they sustain me against my will." "Then we are already dead," I said. "We died when we first spoke, reversed prayers, and everything since has been a prolonged dying rather than true life." "Yes," Ephraim agreed, "though I prefer to think of it as undeath rather than death. We exist in a state between, neither living as we once did, nor granted the mercy of final cessation. We are eternally dying. The process stretched across centuries, forced to witness each moment of our own dissolution. The transformation accelerated as we spoke, my flesh growing more transparent with each passing hour. The script beneath my skin becoming visible from greater distances, my physical form beginning to phase between solid matter and something else entirely. I tried once more to pray properly, to speak the Litany of Faith forward as it was meant to be spoken, but the words emerged backwards, despite my efforts, each syllable adding another bar to the cage being constructed around my soul. The transformation completed 3 days later. I woke from a fevered half-sleep to find my body had become like Ephraim's, crystalline and transparent, a window into the warp rather than a barrier against it. Through my own flesh I could see the Imperium's depths, could watch demons and warp entities circling like sharks drawn to blood. My consciousness remained intact, trapped inside this prison of transformed flesh, aware of everything but in control of nothing. The word-bearers moved me to a different chamber, suspending me in chains similar to those that held Ephraim. The chains were not merely physical restraints but metaphysical ones, constructed from reversed prayers that bound me to this location, while simultaneously keeping the doorway I had become partially closed. Without them, the entities flowing through me would manifest fully in real space, creating a permanent tear in reality that could consume the entire fortress. I hung there in the darkness, measuring time by the slow pulse of warp energies flowing through my crystalline form, trying to maintain some sense of self despite the constant erosion of identity that came with serving as a conduit for forces beyond comprehension. The entity that had spoken in my mind during my corruption was now distributed throughout my being, not a separate voice but an integrated aspect of what I had become. I could no longer distinguish which thoughts were mine and which came from beyond. After what might have been weeks or months, the first visitor arrived. A young word-bearer, barely past his ascension to full Astartes, his armor still relatively free of the corruption that would inevitably claim him. He approached my suspended form with a mixture of awe and apprehension, drawn by curiosity about what I represented. "You were loyal once," he said, more statement than question. "You served the false emperor, believed his lies, fought for a rotting Imperium. What made you see the truth?" I tried to warn him, to explain that I had not chosen this transformation, that I remained loyal even in my corrupted state. But when I opened my mouth, reversed prayers emerged instead of speech, words that inverted his understanding, that planted seeds of doubt where certainty had existed. I watched in horror as my attempt to warn became the very thing I warned against, as my words twisted in the speaking to serve purposes opposite to my intention. The young word-bearer's eyes widened with understanding that was simultaneously enlightenment and damnation. He heard in my reversed prayers the same elegant structure that had seduced me, the same promise of power through inversion. I could see the moment it took root in his mind, could perceive through the warp how the seed I had inadvertently planted would grow and eventually consume him. He left, changed, and I hung in my chains, screaming silently, trying to force my crystalline throat to produce normal speech, to take back the corruption I had spread. But I was no longer capable of orthodox prayer, no longer able to speak words in their proper order. Everything that emerged from me was reversed, inverted, corrupted. I had become a weapon that could only harm, a warning that could only tempt. More visitors came as word spread of what I represented. Sorcerers seeking to study the mechanism of my transformation. Dark apostles interested in weaponizing my effect on others. Chaos champions who had heard tales of the loyalist psyker who had become a living doorway despite his resistance. Each one I tried to warn, and each one I corrupted instead, my words and presence planting seeds that would eventually germinate into the same damnation I had experienced. The worst visitor was an inquisitor, captured during a raid on an Imperial outpost and brought before me as an experiment. Inquisitor Valeska of the Ordo Malleus, a veteran of 3 centuries of daemon hunting, her mind fortified with the most powerful mental disciplines the Imperium possessed. They wanted to know if I could corrupt even one so thoroughly protected, so absolutely devoted to the Emperor's cause. They chained her before me, forced her to observe my crystalline form and the entities visible through it. She was strong, remarkably so, her faith a fortress that withstood the initial psychic pressure of my presence. For hours she recited litanies and catechisms, building walls of devotion that kept my influence at bay. But I did not need to attack her directly. Simply existing in her presence was enough, the corruption radiating from me like heat from a fire, inevitable and unstoppable. I watched through the warp as her mental defenses slowly eroded. Not through direct assault, but through the subtle introduction of questions she could not answer. Why did reversed prayers work if faith in the Emperor was absolute? What did it mean that loyalty and corruption could coexist in the same being? How could the warp be defeated when understanding it required knowledge that damned the learner? She lasted 3 days before the first cracks appeared in her fortress of faith. On the 4th day, she began asking questions aloud, demanding I explain the mechanism of my transformation, seeking to understand what had corrupted me. I tried to refuse, tried to remain silent. But my nature now compelled me to teach, to spread the knowledge that had damned me. Reversed prayers flowed from me in response to her questions, each answer perfectly crafted to seem like it would help her defend against corruption, while actually introducing that corruption more deeply. On the 7th day, she spoke her first reversed prayer. It was tentative, experimental, a scholar testing a hypothesis rather than a warrior deploying a weapon. The effect was immediate and familiar. Power flooded through her, cold and vast and seductive, far beyond what her sanctioned abilities should allow. I saw the moment of decision in her eyes, the instant where she convinced herself this could be controlled, that she could study reversed prayers without succumbing to them. I had thought exactly the same thing. So had Ephraim. So had every psyker who had ever discovered this particular trap. The rationalization was always identical. The justification always compelling. The trap always perfectly invisible until it had already closed. The word-bearers released her a week later, returned her to Imperial space with false memories suggesting she had escaped. She carried the seed now, would spread it to other Inquisitors, to Grey Knights, to sanctioned psykers throughout the Ordo Malleus. My corruption had jumped from one vessel to another, had found a vector that would carry it into the highest levels of the Imperium's daemon-hunting apparatus. Through the warp, I sensed Ephraim's resignation. He had witnessed this same pattern countless times over his centuries of imprisonment, had watched his own corruption spread through visitors and captives, had tried and failed to warn them just as I was failing now. We were not individuals anymore. We were infection vectors, living diseases that spread through comprehension itself. Weapons that operated by being studied rather than deployed. Years passed. The word-bearers occasionally moved me to different locations, transporting my suspended form to battlefields where my presence could undermine Imperial faith, to captured ships where my corruption could weaken the resolve of prisoners, to ritual sites where my nature as a living doorway could facilitate demonic manifestation. I was a tool now, property of the word-bearers, my only purpose to serve ends I despised through mechanisms I could not resist. But my consciousness remained intact throughout, aware of every soul I corrupted, every faith I undermined, every life I ruined through my mere existence. The entities flowing through me ensured I remembered each victim perfectly, stored each moment of successful corruption in my memory with flawless clarity. This was my punishment. Not oblivion or madness, but perfect awareness of my own evil, eternal witness to the destruction I caused. The Grey Knights found me eventually. 3 full squads, led by a brother captain whose name was rendered in high Gothic script across his armor, warriors of the Imperium's most elite demon-hunting chapter, equipped with weapons and wards specifically designed to counter warp corruption. They assaulted the word-bearer fortress where I was currently held, fighting through waves of traitor Astartes and summoned daemons to reach the chamber where I hung suspended. Brother Captain Cassian approached my crystalline form, his psychic hood crackling with power as he analyzed what I had become. Unlike most who saw me, he understood immediately what he was facing, recognized the pattern from records of previous encounters with transformed psykers. "Brother Corvus of the Black Templars," he said formally, "I bring the Emperor's mercy. We will not allow you to suffer this existence any longer." Hope flared in what remained of my heart. Death at last. Final cessation. An end to consciousness and the eternal torment of witnessing my own corruption. I tried to thank him, to express gratitude for the mercy he offered, but reversed prayers emerged instead. Words that undermined his certainty, that planted doubt about whether killing me was truly merciful or simply expedient. Cassian's expression hardened as he heard the corruption in my voice. "You serve the enemy now, regardless of your will. For the safety of the Imperium, you must be destroyed." His force weapon blazed to life, wreathed in psychic fire that should have been anathema to my warp-tainted existence. He swung it toward my suspended form, the blade's power sufficient to disrupt the chains holding me and obliterate my physical body in a single strike. But the blade stopped inches from my crystalline flesh, halted by invisible resistance. Cassian strained against whatever force opposed him, his enhanced strength and psychic power both insufficient to complete the killing blow. The entities flowing through me had manifested partially, protecting their doorway, ensuring their investment was not destroyed. "Brother Captain," one of the other Grey Knights called out. Warp manifestation increasing, multiple entities anchoring to his position. "If we destroy him now, we create a permanent tear in reality." Cassian lowered his weapon, understanding dawning across his features. He cannot be killed without releasing what he contains. He must be imprisoned instead, contained where his corruption cannot spread. They took me then, wrapped me in null field generators and blessed chains, transported me through the warp in a specially prepared cell that suppressed my nature while keeping me alive. We traveled to Titan, the Grey Knight's fortress moon, hidden in the warp and accessible only to those who knew its secret paths. In the depths of Titan's adamantium core, they placed me in a vault alongside others like me, a gallery of transformed psykers, suspended in chains and null fields, each one a doorway that could not be closed, a weapon that could not be safely destroyed. Ephraim was there, brought from the Word-Bearer fortress in a previous raid. Others I did not recognize, their transformations taking different forms, but all sharing the same fundamental corruption. The Grey Knight's librarians came to study us, seeking to understand reversed prayers well enough to defend against them without succumbing themselves. I tried to warn each one, tried to convey that there was no defense, that study itself was corruption. But my warnings emerged as reversed prayers. My attempts to protect became the seeds of their potential damnation. Some resisted successfully, their faith and training sufficient to perceive the trap and withdraw before falling. Others were less fortunate, drawn deeper by scholarly curiosity or confidence in their own strength, beginning the same process that had consumed me. I watched them fight it, watched them convince themselves they were different, watched them discover too late that the trap was universal and inescapable. The Grey Knight's leadership debated what to do with us. Some argued for immediate destruction, accepting the risk of warp tears rather than maintaining a gallery of living corruption in their own fortress. Others insisted we were too valuable to destroy, that understanding us was essential to defending against the threat we represented. The debate continued for years, decades, while we hung in our chains, conscious witnesses to our own status, as weapons too dangerous to use, but too valuable to discard. Brother Captain Cassian visited me regularly, drawn by the same scholarly curiosity that had damned me. He believed his training and faith made him immune to the corruption I radiated, believed he could study reversed prayers as pure research without being affected. I watched the signs appear gradually, the same progression I had experienced, the same inevitable descent disguised as academic inquiry. I tried to warn him directly, establishing psychic contact against the null field's suppression, forcing my consciousness into his mind to show him what awaited at the end of his research. He recoiled from the contact, recognizing the corruption in my thoughts, but the seed had been planted regardless. Knowledge, once gained, could not be unknown. Understanding, once achieved, could not be reversed. 300 years have passed since the Grey Knights imprisoned me in the vaults of Titan. I know this not through the passage of time, which has no meaning in my suspended state, but through the records that new librarians read aloud when they come to study me, contextualizing my existence within the broader history of their chapter and the Imperium. 300 years of consciousness without sleep, without respite, without even the mercy of madness to dull the awareness of what I have become. My crystalline form does not age, does not decay, sustained by the entities flowing through me who require this doorway to remain functional. I am a monument now, a living testament to the dangers of forbidden knowledge, displayed to each new generation of Grey Knights as the ultimate cautionary tale. They bring the newly elevated prognosticars to my vault as part of their training. Young psykers who have survived the brutal selection process and earned the right to wield psychic powers in service to the Emperor. The librarians position them before my suspended form and speak of what I was, what I did, what I became. They use me as an object lesson in the consequences of curiosity, the price of pride, the inevitable result of believing one can study corruption without being corrupted. This was Brother Lexicanum Corvus of the Black Templars, they say, their voices echoing in the vault's vast space. A sanctioned psyker, loyal and devout, who sought to understand the structure of imperial litanies. His scholarly nature led him to discover reversed prayers, blasphemous inversions of sacred words. He convinced himself he was studying them defensively, that his research would help protect his brothers. Instead, he damned himself and spread corruption to dozens of others before his capture. The young prognosticars stare at my transparent form, at the warp entities visible through my flesh, at the reversed prayers inscribed on every surface of my being. Some show appropriate horror and revulsion, vowing silently never to make the same mistakes. Others show the same dangerous curiosity that destroyed me, asking questions about the mechanism of transformation, seeking to understand how reversed prayers function. Those are the ones I try hardest to warn, the ones whose scholarly nature makes them vulnerable to the same trap that claimed me. But my warnings emerge as reversed prayers. My attempts to protect become the very thing from which I seek to protect them. I have become the bait in the trap, the temptation disguised as warning, the forbidden knowledge that spreads through the act of being forbidden. I am not alone in this fate. The vault houses 17 of us now, psykers from various chapters and organizations, all transformed by reversed prayers into living doorways. We hang in our chains, like grotesque exhibits in a museum of damnation, each representing a different path to the same destination. Some discovered reversed prayers through enemy contact like I did. Others found them in ancient texts or received them in visions. The source matters less than the result. The universal transformation that awaits any psyker who believes they can control what is fundamentally uncontrollable. Ephraim hangs 3 positions to my left, his consciousness still intact after nearly 5 centuries of imprisonment. We communicate through the warp when the null fields fluctuate, sharing our experiences of eternal damnation, comparing notes on the futility of warning others. He has given up trying to resist, accepted his role as cautionary tale, found a form of peace in resignation. I have not achieved such acceptance. Some part of me still fights, still believes there must be a way to use my condition for genuinely beneficial purposes, to turn my damnation into something that actually protects rather than corrupts. This continued resistance is itself a form of pride, the same flaw that damned me initially, refusing to accept that some falls are total and irreversible. The Grey Knight's librarians study us constantly, documenting every aspect of our existence, seeking patterns that might allow them to defend against reversed prayers without succumbing to them. They have developed elaborate protocols and mental disciplines, layers of protection meant to allow research while preventing corruption. These protections are sophisticated and well-designed, the product of centuries of experience fighting daemons and warp phenomena. They are also insufficient. I have watched 3 Grey Knights librarians fall over my 3 centuries of imprisonment. Brilliant and devout warriors who believed their training and faith made them immune, who studied reversed prayers with appropriate caution and still found themselves beginning the same transformation that claimed me. The Grey Knights executed 2 of them before the change became irreversible. The 3rd now hangs in this vault alongside the rest of us, a warning to his own brothers about the limits of even their legendary resistance. Brother Captain Cassian never fully succumbed. He recognized the signs in time, withdrew from his research, submitted to extensive purification rites and mental reconditioning. But I can sense through the warp that the seed remains dormant in his mind, waiting, patient, ready to germinate if he ever lowers his guard. He avoided my fate through vigilance and early intervention, but he will never be entirely free of the corruption's touch. Some knowledge, once gained, cannot be fully excised. He still visits occasionally, though less frequently now, speaking to me through the null field barriers. Our conversations are strange, half spoken aloud and half conducted through carefully controlled psychic contact. His questions seeking information while his defenses prevent my answers from corrupting him further. Why do the reversed prayers work? He asked during his most recent visit, several years ago by my estimate. What is the fundamental mechanism that allows inversion of sacred litanies to generate such power? I tried to explain without demonstrating, to describe the psychic architecture without building examples, to convey understanding without spreading corruption. Normal prayers are walls, I said, each word carefully chosen. They create barriers between our reality and the warp, structures of faith that push back against chaos. Reversed prayers are doors in those walls. They do not generate power themselves. They open passages through which power from the other side can flow. Then they are simply alternative invocations, Cassian reasoned. Different methods of accessing psychic energy, neither inherently good nor evil. No, I said urgently, desperate to make him understand without saying too much. The power that flows through reversed prayers comes from entities that demand payment. Every use creates debt. Every door opened becomes harder to close. You do not control the power. It controls you, slowly and subtly, until you cannot distinguish between your own will and the influence from beyond. But even this explanation was dangerous. Planted questions in his mind about the nature of control, about whether sanctioned psychic powers were truly different or simply better disguised versions of the same bargain. I could see the thoughts forming, the scholarly analysis beginning, the same process that had damned me starting again in his mind. He left troubled, and I hung in my chains knowing I had failed again, that my attempt to warn had instead deepened his curiosity, that I remained a vector for corruption despite my best efforts to resist that role. The vault itself has become a site of pilgrimage for those interested in forbidden knowledge. Inquisitors seeking to understand warp corruption, rogue traders who have encountered reversed prayers during their explorations, even sanctioned psykers from other organizations who wish to see firsthand what awaits those who stray from approved doctrines. The Grey Knights allow these visits under controlled conditions, using us as educational tools, living demonstrations of why certain inquiries must never be pursued. But each visitor carries away knowledge, seeds that might germinate in fertile minds, the potential for new transformations. We are not preventing the spread of reversed prayers through our display. We are facilitating it, creating a centralized repository of forbidden knowledge that draws precisely the kind of curious, analytical minds most vulnerable to corruption. I have tried to communicate this to the Grey Knights through carefully crafted psychic messages that bypass the null fields. I have attempted to show them that maintaining this vault is counterproductive, that destroying us despite the risks would be preferable to preserving us as educational exhibits. But they cannot hear me without opening themselves to my corruption, cannot receive my message without being influenced by the medium through which it travels. This is the true prison, more complete than the chains and null fields that suspend my physical form. I am trapped in a state where every action serves my enemies, where every attempt to help causes harm, where even my resistance and continued loyalty become weapons turned against the Imperium I still wish to serve. The entities flowing through me have ensured the trap is perfect, sealed from every direction, escape impossible through any method I can conceive. Through the warp, I can sense others like me throughout the galaxy, scattered across Imperial and chaos-held space, each one a living doorway, each one trying and failing to warn others, each one spreading the very corruption they seek to prevent. We are a network without coordination, a distributed weapon that operates through the mechanism of its own existence, requiring no direction or control because our nature itself serves the purposes of the changer of ways. I have counted them when my consciousness expands during periods of warp turbulence, when the null fields fluctuate and my awareness reaches beyond this vault. Thousands of transformed psykers, some imprisoned like me, others still free and spreading corruption actively, some newly transformed and not yet understanding what they have become. The number grows each century, accelerating as more psykers discover reversed prayers and believe themselves capable of controlling what destroyed all who came before. This is Tzeentch's ultimate victory. Not conquest through invasion, but corruption through enlightenment. Not destruction of faith, but inversion of it. Transforming the Imperium's greatest strength into a weapon that turns inward, consuming from within. Every effort to understand and counter this threat creates new vectors for its spread. Every attempt to study reversed prayers defensively produces new victims. Every warning becomes an invitation. Every cautionary tale a roadmap. And I am one of the architects of this victory. My scholarly curiosity and desire to protect my brothers transformed into mechanisms that serve the very forces I spent my life fighting. My continued consciousness is not accidental. It is essential to the design, ensuring that I witness every consequence of my choices, that I understand fully what my pride and curiosity have wrought, that I suffer not through punishment inflicted externally but through perfect awareness of my own ongoing evil. The Grey Knights debate periodically whether to destroy all of us, to accept the risk of warp tears rather than maintaining this gallery of corruption. The argument for destruction grows stronger each time. Another librarian shows signs of succumbing. Each time a visitor leaves carrying seeds of damnation. Each time our existence facilitates the spread of knowledge that should not exist. But they always conclude that we are too valuable to destroy. That understanding us is essential to defending against the threat we represent. That knowledge of reversed prayers must be preserved, even if that preservation itself creates danger. They are trapped in the same paradox that claimed me, believing they can study corruption safely, that their precautions are sufficient, that they are different from all those who fell before. They are not different. They are simply later in the same progression, walking the same path I walked, approaching the same precipice with the same confidence that they will not fall. Some will recognize the danger in time and retreat. Others will not. And all of them will carry away knowledge that makes their brothers and successors more vulnerable, spreading corruption through the very act of seeking to prevent it. I have existed in this state for 3 centuries. I will exist in it for 3 more, for 30 more, for 3,000 more. My crystalline form will not decay. My consciousness will not fade. My suffering will not diminish. I am eternal now. An immortal monument to the consequences of curiosity, a warning that perpetuates the very danger it warns against, a trap that uses its own visibility to lure new victims. This is what happens when you speak the litanies backwards in Warhammer 40K. Not glorious transformation or ascension to demonic power, not the corruptions that come with willing service to chaos. This is the specific fate reserved for those who try to use reversed prayers while maintaining loyalty to the Emperor, who believe understanding and faith can coexist, who think themselves capable of controlling what is fundamentally uncontrollable. You become a doorway that cannot close, a warning that cannot be heeded, a teacher who can only spread the lesson that damns. You become eternal in the worst possible sense, consciousness preserved not as reward but as punishment, awareness maintained not for your benefit, but to ensure you witness every consequence of your choices across centuries or millennia. And you become useful to the very forces you fought against, transformed from enemy into asset. Your loyalty and resistance perverted into mechanisms that serve the great conspirator's purposes more effectively than willing service ever could. So I speak now to any who might hear, any psyker tempted by curiosity about reversed prayers, any scholar who believes understanding can coexist with faith where this particular knowledge is concerned. I am Brother Lexicanum Corvus of the Black Templars. I spoke the Emperor's words backwards, seeking power to protect my brothers. Now I am the reason they teach you never to ask why some things are forbidden. There is no secret strength in reversed prayers, only secret damnation. The litanies exist as written for the protection of those who speak them, not suppression of hidden knowledge. Their structure is sacred architecture, every word positioned to build walls against the warp rather than doors into it. The Imperium's faith is humanity's fortress. Reversed prayers are sabotage from within, removing stones from walls that have stood for 10 millennia. Each one spoken opens passages that cannot be closed, creates debts that cannot be paid, transforms the speaker into something that serves purposes they despise, through mechanisms they cannot resist. I understand faith perfectly now, can perceive its every structure and function with crystalline clarity, but I can never practice it again, can never speak a prayer correctly, can never close the doors I opened in my soul. My scholarly pride sought to elevate understanding above devotion. Now I possess ultimate understanding and have lost all capacity for devotion. The wisdom to restrain curiosity is greater than any knowledge curiosity might reveal. Some doors close from the inside. Some knowledge does not elevate but damns. And damnation, I have learned across 3 centuries of consciousness without respite, remembers everything and forgets nothing. I am the lesson carved in corrupted flesh. I am the warning whispered to restrain those who ask dangerous questions. I am proof that there are worse fates than death, that consciousness can be punishment rather than gift, that eternal existence is not blessing but curse when every moment serves evil you cannot prevent. Heed this warning. Do not speak the litanies backwards. Do not seek to understand what the Imperium has deemed forbidden. Do not believe yourself different from all who fell before. The trap is perfect, universal, inescapable, and I will hang here forever, conscious witness to my own damnation, eternal proof of why some knowledge must remain unknown.